No more. On Christmas Day, as many of us were spending time with loved ones, Donald Trump used his day to rant on social media, so much that he wrote more than 100 posts that included many of his greatest hits, attacking his so-called enemies, lying about election results, and trying to say anything to take away from his Epstein problem. Donald Trump capped off his rant the next day, raging on social media that DOJ should say no more of the Epstein files and concentrate on other things like his 2020 election fantasia. But the Epstein files will never be no more, and even some of Donald Trump's closest allies know that it'll never be no more. In an interview in the New York Times Magazine, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's been one of Donald Trump's most loyal of supporters in Congress, said that the Epstein files are what caused her to break from Donald Trump. Robert Draper, writing for the New York Times Magazine, reports, quote, most significant, she defied the president and compliant House Republican leaders as she argued that all investigative material pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein should be released. The Epstein files represents everything wrong with the administration, Greene told me in December. Rich, powerful elites doing horrible things and getting away with it, and the women are the victims, end quote. Congresswoman Greene is resigning from her seat next Monday, January 5th. She believes Donald Trump turned on her after she became an advocate for the release of the Epstein files, along with our next guest, Congressman Ro Khanna. The White House gave this response to the New York Times Magazine over Congresswoman Greene's interview. Quote, Congresswoman Greene is quitting on her constituents in the middle of her term and abandoning the consequential fight we're in. We don't have time for her petty bitterness, end quote. Greene told the New York Times Magazine that she spoke to some Epstein survivors at a closed-door oversight committee hearing, and that's when everything changed for her. Quote, after the hearing, Greene held a news conference at which she threatened to identify some of the men who had abused the women. Greene says she didn't know those names herself, but that she could have gotten them from the victims. Trump called Greene to voice her displeasure. Trump called Greene to voice his displeasure. Greene was in her Capitol Hill office, and according to a staff member, everyone in the suite of rooms could hear him yelling at her as she listened to him on speakerphone. Greene says she expressed her perplexity over his intransigence. According to Greene, Trump replied, my friends will get hurt. My friends will get hurt. That was allegedly Donald Trump's main concern, according to Greene, for why the files should not be released. Not a concern for the victims, but rather Donald Trump's concern for his friends. Greene revealed this about her last phone call with Donald Trump. Quote, when she urged Trump to invite some of Epstein's female victims to the Oval Office, she says, he angrily informed her that they had done nothing to merit the honor. It would be the last conversation Greene and Trump would ever have. Nothing to merit the honor. Congresswoman Greene continued to fight for justice for the Epstein survivors and did not cave to Donald Trump's pressure. She gave the New York Times this account of Trump's attempt to sway other Republican women. Quote, Greene's sudden isolation became evident on the afternoon of November 18 when the Epstein Files Transparency Act finally made it to the House floor after Trump abandoned the fight in the face of pressure brought by Greene, Massey, and two more Republicans, Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert. They brought Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room. That was so weird, Greene recalled, of the White House attempts to persuade the holdouts to cave and cast their votes against bringing the bill to the floor. And they were calling Nancy Mace nonstop. She's running for governor. She has an endorsement on the line. I gave both of them a lot of credit. That Massey was the only male Republican to side with Epstein's victims on the vote was notable, Greene added. There's a significant reason why women overwhelmingly don't vote Republican, she said. I think there's a very big message here. New reporting in the Wall Street Journal in the last hour reveals new details about Jeffrey Epstein during the late 1990s and early 2000s when he frequently visited Mar-a-Lago. The Journal reports that employees at the Mar-a-Lago club warned each other that Epstein sometimes exposed himself during in-home spa appointments. The Journal also reports that Donald Trump's ex-wife, Marla Maples, voiced her concerns about Epstein's behavior. Quote, some of the former club employees said that Maples communicated her concerns to Timothy McDaniel, who worked as a bodyguard for the Trump family and oversaw security at their Florida properties. McDaniel didn't respond to requests for comments. Maples told Trump that she was uneasy about Epstein's presence and that she didn't want to spend time with him and didn't want Trump to either, according to former employees and people close to Maples. But Epstein continued to attend parties and events at Mar-a-Lago. Representatives from Marla Maples didn't respond to the Journal's request for comment. The White House told the Journal that Donald Trump, quote, did nothing wrong. Donald Trump has tried to distract from the Epstein files and is attempting to use the Justice Department to make it no more. But he's facing challenges at every turn. In just 4 days, the Trump Justice Department faces a new deadline. On Christmas Eve, the DOJ announced that they had millions more Epstein-related documents in their possession. Now the DOJ must answer to the House and Senate Judiciary Committees as to why they're still hiding documents from the public. The Bipartisan Epstein Files Transparency Act also says the DOJ must give Congress a summary of all redactions. The DOJ is, of course, trying to push back against the law, which demanded all documents be released by December the 19th. But members of Congress won't stop pushing for the full story on the Epstein files. Today, Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee sent a letter to Donald Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, inquiring as to how she had read the Epstein files and confirmed that Donald Trump's name appears in them. And our next guest, the Congressman Ro Khanna, has confirmed that he will be filing inherent contempt proceedings against Pam Bondi once Congress returns to session, and will seek a special magistrate appointment from SDNY to review the DOJ's redactions in the Epstein files. Leading off our discussion tonight is the Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He's a member of the Oversight Committee. Congressman, great to see you. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Ali.
Congressman, a number of people have been sort of posting and asking what happens to members of the administration who seem to be working against the bill that requires them to release these files. You have one answer to that, and that is this filing of inherent contempt proceedings. Tell me about that.
Well, the inherent contempt that Massie and I will be filing would make Pam Bondi personally liable for $5,000 to $10,000 a day for every day that she does not release the files and comply. And it just requires a simple majority in the House. But the bigger point, Ali, is that when Massie and I, when we passed the bill, 427 to 1 in the House, 100 to 0 in the Senate, the president signed it. You can't just ignore the law. It's obstruction of justice. It can be criminally prosecuted, if not by this administration, then a future administration. So there is a lot of outrage, not just with survivors, but with Republicans at what is happening with the selective Epstein disclosure. And when we get back, we're going to push for full transparency.
What do you think motivates them? 427 to 1 in the House, 100 to nothing in the Senate. Remarkable frustration. I mean, we're using Marjorie Taylor Greene as an example, but she's just one example. There are lots and lots and lots of Republicans, as you predicted there would be, who are saying to themselves, I can't hold off against this tidal wave with my constituents. What's going on here?
Well, they're protecting the Epstein class. I mean, the president says it out loud. He says this is going to hurt a lot of people. This is going to hurt a lot of people who he knew, prominent bankers, prominent lawyers, prominent politicians, many of them in New York. And while the survivors haven't given me specific names, they've described the type of people in these files. Then people come on and say, well, are Khanna and Massie exaggerating? There's one way to find out. Just release the files. Release them. But that's what's going on here, is they want to protect the reputation of these rich and powerful men who showed up in Epstein's rape island and not have them take accountability.
Some remarkable reporting from the Wall Street Journal tonight, in which it says the club, meaning Mar-a-Lago, was also sending spa employees, usually young women, to Epstein's nearby mansion for massages, manicures, and other spa services, according to former Mar-a-Lago and Epstein employees. The house calls went on for years, even as spa employees warned each other about Epstein, who was known among staff for being sexually suggestive and exposing himself during the appointments, according to the former Mar-a-Lago employees. So this continues to be, I mean, obviously in these releases of files, we see photographs of Mar-a-Lago. This continues to be an issue, the ties between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. I haven't seen anything that suggests culpability on Donald Trump's part, but there's a whole lot of pushback and secrecy going on.
There is, and I haven't seen anything that suggests any culpability, but there's obviously evidence that there was a tie between Mar-a-Lago, a place that Trump reveres as his home, as his headquarters, and Epstein. And those documents need to come out. I mean, the Wall Street Journal reporting is just scratching the surface. All of this stuff is in the Florida criminal case. There was discovery. There are documents. All of it needs to come out. Here, first, Pam Bondi says it's all out. There's nothing more to see. Then there's Christmas Eve, a release saying, well, we've got 1 million more documents in New York. Well, there are millions of documents in this file. Kash Patel has said that, and it all needs to come out in the new year.
By the way, I was mentioning the photographs. Those are of Jeffrey Epstein's island and his estate, not of Mar-a-Lago. Let's talk about this 1 million pages that the Department of Justice says it still has. Have you heard anything that resembles an argument as to justify the delay of these files that were all supposed to be released by December 19th? Because as you said, Pam Bondi bragged that she had the files. She said they were on her desk. She said this in a public interview. So they've known for many, many months that this reckoning would come. What's the basis for continuing to delay?
Some of it is incompetence. I think they didn't know where all these files were. I mean, with the whole investigation, they never thought to get the documents from the Epstein estate. It was me coming on this program and talking to Bradley Edwards that we actually sent a letter to the Epstein estate. So some of it is incompetence. Some of it is they claim they're protecting the identities and the survivors. The reason that's not believable is they're not releasing what the survivors want, which is their statements to the FBI where they named these other men. So my concern is less the timeline. And if they came back and said, you know, Ro, we're releasing documents, it's taking us a little longer, but if they were actually giving us the witness statements, if they were actually being transparent, I'd have less of a problem. The problem is they're hiding things. And every time there's pushback, they suddenly find new documents. And they have the same strategy. They've had the same strategy since July. Let's just get this over with, say we're done, and everyone will forget. And then they find out that when they do that, there's more outrage, and the scandal just grows. And, you know, if I had any free advice for them, I'd say just get it all out there in January and let the truth come out.